I'm Matt with etrailer. Today we're going to be talking about the WaySafe weight distribution hitch that's going to have a 2.5-inch shank and it's going to be rated for 8,500 pounds. We're going to have this on our 2017 Chevrolet Silverado 2500. So this is going to be a great option for anyone who's still kind of new to weight distribution hitches in general, or you have a load that is changing up quite a bit. This is going to help you monitor it since it has a scale. So let's check it out. So weight distribution in general is going to be great, especially when we start getting into those larger trailers like this Kodiak I have back here today. Now, there's a few things to think about what this does, and essentially it is just redistributing that weight that's going to be on that ball originally. So it's going to make it a better just ride experience when you're pulling that trailer, because what's happening is we don't have as much sag at this center point here. It's going to level everything out. And that does a few things for us. With these bars on the side, we're not going to get as much sway when we're driving down the road, so you're going to feel a lot more comfortable. And you're going to have more control on the vehicle side of things too. Because since we're not having as much sag, our front axle is going to have more contact on the ground, so when you're making those turns, you're going to actually feel that connection. What makes WaySafe stand out compared to the other options out there is a few things. The biggest thing is going to be the scale right here. So once you load your trailer on here, it's going to let you know what that tongue weight is exactly. So there's not going to be any guesswork involved. And the other thing too is going to be these bars we have on the side. And these bars are great because most 4-point systems, when they're making contact over here, because it relies on friction, it's quite noisy. This, comparatively to the rest of them, is going to be not as loud. And something else I really like about this is going to be the installation. After you install it the first time, the following times only takes about 10 or 20 minutes to actually get this all in place. And we do have an app that makes you be able to calculate everything a lot more simply. But I do want to talk a little bit more to the Silverado experience. So a lot of times you got to worry about your tailgate, being able to access this if you are hooked up. And what we have today, we have plenty of room. We're not going to make contact with our jack because it sticks out a decent amount and it's not going to be too high up. I know some of these can get a little bit larger and more bulky, but we got plenty of clearance right here. Now something I did want to check is going to be our wheel well clearance. So we have this Kodiak back here and it's roughly around 6,600 pounds. So when I get this and I don't have my weight distribution hooked up at the moment, this is sitting at 41 inches. Without us being hooked up, this sits at about 42 inches. Yours might be a little bit different depending on what your suspension looks like. But when I actually put on the weight distribution arms, that's going to raise it up to 41.5. So we're going to get less sag back here. Now, if we had a larger trailer, you'd probably notice a larger difference with that. But when you do have any type of trailer back here with your weight distribution, you do just want a little bit of sag still. So let's take a closer look at some of the details of this. So with that scale, this is going to go from 0 to 5,000, and 5,000 is a pretty large number, typically referring to your tongue weight, but the way this works is applying extra tension since we have these bars in place. And the app will tell you specifically how to reach the correct number that you need to haul. Now the next thing is going to be our drop. The one we have today is going to have a 8-inch drop, but if you did need a different variation, we're going to have other options here on our website, along with the shank. Because like I said earlier, this is going to be a 2.5-inch shank, goes into your receiver. If you need a 2-inch one, also have that here, and it is going to come with a locking pin, so no one can come by and take your weight distribution hitch. And when it comes to maintenance, the big thing is when you're not using this, you can just throw it back in your trailer, and we are going to have some grease points. So we're going to have a Zerk fitting right here at the very top, and then we're going to have another grease point right here. You can grease this up, and I'll let these arms pivot a little bit more smoothly. Now you're going to have a recommendation in your instructions to let you know when and how often you should do this. We are going to have these bars, so this is a 4-point system like I was saying earlier, typically pretty noisy, but this one is quiet compared to the rest of them. Now when it comes to how it's going to mount back here, we are going to have a bolt-on bracket, so this is relatively easy to take off. It's going to be 2 bolts, one on the top, one on the bottom, and 2 more that secure the side of the bracket. so you don't have to make any permanent modifications to your trailer. We can jump into the installation. I will say I'd recommend finding a level surface and chalking up your trailer so you can do this accurately and safely. So the first thing we're going to be doing is just making sure we get this installed into our hitch. It's going to be like any other type of ball mount out there. Once you got that pinned into place, then we can come back over here. I'm going to lift my trailer up just a little bit so we can connect this and I can check the weight. Now I'll be able to take this number here, and like that app I was talking about earlier, I'll be able to download that if you haven't already, and we can input that number into the app. This is what the app's going to look like once you actually get there. So right here, it's going to say actual tongue weight. I'm just going to put in 650. That's what it looks like, roughly what we have right now. Now I've uncoupled, and what I'm going to do over here is make sure everything is level. That's why we want to have this on flat, level surface. So what I'm going to do is grab a level here, place it there. I can tell it's a little bit off, and lower this down. I'd also recommend just going by with a tape measure, measuring on the front of the frame and the back of the frame to make sure it's the same measurement. Now that our trailer is relatively level, we're going to come back through and get a measurement. What we're going to get a measurement of is going to be the top of that coupler, and that's going to be around 19 inches for us today. And what I want to make sure is the top of the ball on your ball mount is going to be around an inch higher than this. So kind of roughly like this. So where we're sitting at right now, I'm at 18 inches for this. So this is going to have to go up some. The way we're going to do that is we're going to remove these bolts that hold it in place right here and go up by one hole. Secure this back down. Double check my measurement. And we're looking pretty good there. And then we're just going to come back through and secure these down with a flat washer, a split washer, then your nut. And then once you get them hand tight, we'll come back through and torque them down the spec. That's, you're going to have a label on here that'll let you know what to torque it down to. Now this is going to be a good point where we can put our brackets on. I'll talk about that process in a second. But let me show you how to get that measurement of where they're going to go. So we're going to measure from the center of your coupler to about right over here. I'm going to go about to 32 inches. Typically that would be the max range I'd recommend going to, but there's going to be some brackets that hold up our batteries. So what I'm going to do instead is find a point that's going to be able to avoid those brackets. So I already have a marker right here, and this is going to be just under 29 inches for my case today. So again, make sure you have a paint marker, mark that out, and then we can grab that bracket and line it up to the center of that. You're going to want both sides to be at that same distance. And essentially, I've already got the whole system put together, but I'll remove some of it so we can kind of break it down from the beginning. So when we're starting off, I recommend having a carriage bolt through here, one of your longer ones, and having a split washer and a nut there. I'm just going to extend that out. I'm going to remove the one on the bottom completely. And we're just going to put it right over here. You notice the orientation to have this? There's going to be a big gap, and we want the grouping of those square holes together on the bottom. So I'm going to just stick that through here, making sure that's lined up. Then we're going to grab this carriage bolt, slide it through the one that's closest to your frame. In my case, it's the bottom one here, but if you had two opening, then you'd go with this one instead. I'm going to push that through and connect it to the other side. In my case right now, this top one's a little bit tight, so I'll just loosen that up some. There we have it. I'm going to make sure it's relatively straight. Then I'm going to put this split washer and then nut on the back side. Then I'm going to grab this other bracket, just make sure this is pretty snug on there. And then the way we're going to put this on is I'll just roughly put it in place for the time being. Oh, that's my hole. If you don't get this lined up, it won't hold in place. Now it is. Essentially, what we want to do is, I'll take this piece right out of here so it's a little more clear. We want to measure from the top of this bracket here to the top of where your coupler is sitting. In my case, the top of my coupler is lined up with the top of my frame. Just double check yours. And we want there to be a 9-inch difference here. You can tell mine's a little bit lower than I want it to be. So I'm just going to raise it up by 1 and then double check it there. There we have it. Double check one more time. And we're pretty close. So that should do it. We'll put our carriage bolts back into place and then put a split washer and a nut on them. And there are going to be torque settings on this bracket here. It's going to be at the bottom. You'll just torque these down to the specs. We can come over here now and grab these bars. And the way you're going to do it is, you see that cutout there? We're mainly going to be lining up these holes on the side though, with the holes on the side here. So just stick it right in. Already done this on the other side. And then sometimes when you have the newer one, you might have some burrs in here, so you might have to break those up some. This one we've used a couple times now, so it should slide right into place. I recommend doing this from the outside in, because if you do the reverse way, if these are kind of pulled in pretty tight, they're going to be really hard to remove. So try to keep it on the outside. And then from here, we'll push this out a little bit, and then couple up to our trailer. Now that we're coupled up, I got all the weight on the ball mount now. Make sure it locks into place, and we put a pin in it. From here, we're going to get a couple measurements. You're going to have a couple measurements in your instructions, so we're going to get one where we adjust this bar. It's going to be pretty stiff when you first get it. You want to make sure this is around about 90 degree with the ball mount, kind of in this orientation I have it now. And then I'm going to measure from the front of this bar right here for all my measurements today. So we're going to go from that bar to the center of our rear axle on the truck. So now today I'm getting 57 inches for my setup. Then I'm going to go front of that bar again to about the center of that bracket. That's going to be pretty close to 27 inches. And then we're going to do one more. And you might need to get a friend for this one. I might today. We're going to go from that bar to the center of our axles over here. So this is going to depend if you have a single axle. If you have a single axle, you're going to go from the center of the hub. If you have a dual axle like I have today, I'm going to go in between those two tires. Now just keep those measurements. We're going to use them here in a second. Before we do that, we need to put these bars on here in this bracket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this pin out of our way just for the moment. And if I try to lift it up, this is pretty stiff. It's kind of hard to move, but I can't get it up there. Now we do have this tool and we could use it here, but instead of that, I'm going to use my jack. And this, I do recommend a 5,000-pound jack. And you're going to notice this bar is going to start going higher and above that bracket. Right about there is probably going to do. And let's say your jack gets fully extended, but you're still not going to clear this bracket yet, then you could use this tool. All you'd have to do is have the end of this go into that hole where we took the pin out of the bracket, put it underneath here, and lift up and push it into place, just like that. Now I don't have to do that today because I should be able just to lift it up, push it inwards, put this pin back into place with that clip. We're going to do the same thing for the other side and then lower this back down. So I lowered my jack back down so all the weight is back on our ball mount. And we can go over the app now. So when you open it up and you get through all the menus of like agreeing to the terms and services, we'll get to this point here. It's going to ask you to put in your vehicle's information. So you can put that in a couple different ways. Once that's put in your trailer's information. So we want to put our GVWR. That's the biggest number, the most important one we want to put into place. And then we're going to put in our hitch information, which in our case today is going to be the true toe middle weight. Once that's all put in place, that number we originally got of the tongue weight scale, if you had already put that in here, it might clear once all three of these go into place, and you might get a red upside down thumb. If you just put that in, all three of these should have 3 green lights. If you do, you're on the right track. Now what we're going to do here is put in a couple more things. So we need to let it know we're in the drop position. If you're in the rise position, put it there. And then we want to make sure we're showing how many holes are visible. That's going to be 5 holes, in our case today, that are above my highest bolt on there. Once all that information is put in place, then it's going to opt in to calculate. The way I calculated earlier, it asked me for those 3 measurements we had. So make sure you had written those down, put them into place, and right now I have this number. So I'm going to tighten this down to 1,700 pounds. And the way you do that is by coming over here, and here's a closer look at those 5 holes right here. Now, to tighten this up, we're going to take our tool, and if we need to raise that foot-pound, which we're probably going to have to in our case today, we're going to use this hole at the very end of it and go clockwise. And as you're doing this, you're probably going to want to jostle this around a little bit so it doesn't get caught up anywhere. Now what I like to do though is just grab a socket and wrench to do this instead, because it's going to be a lot quicker and it's not going to take up as much space. And now we're going to grab a torque wrench and we're going to come over to this little nut here. It's going to be right next to your scale. We're going to tighten this down to the torque setting it has listed here. So I'll get this nice and tight till we hear that beep. Then we should be mostly good. And when you got everything tightened down, everything's hooked up, just make sure you connect your safety chains, your wiring, and all your connection points so you can haul safely and legally. Now, if you guys have any other questions, let us know here at eTrailer. And again, I'm Matt, and thanks for watching.